Zach wants to know, how did you feel about the way Better Call Saul ended?
Great. Yeah, keep going. Yeah, go ahead.
And was there any character, I think this is in Breaking Bad too, who you feel, which character do you think least deserved their fate? And that's a question from Jamie as well. So it's a combined question.
Which character did not deserve their fate?
Least deserved their fate.
Least deserved their fate. All right. Huh? Nacho
very strong opinion.
is a bad guy. I don't care how much how sad he is. Howard did not deserve his fate. Howard was a, yeah. The ending of Better Call Saul was great, I thought. And when we read it, we were like, oh my God, this is amazing what you did. Because within that episode, he like flip-flops into a different person, like 2 times. And it's like, wow. But the best thing about it for me as an actor is the hardest things to play were he was emotionally, and I think he was younger than me by a lot. So when we started the show, or before we even started it, I told Vince and Peter, I go, guys, I'm 50 years old. You know, please take that into account because Saul is not 50, and he behaves like a person around 32 most of the time. You know, he's made his way some way into his business, but he's still got these urges that are kind of, you know, very young person's shit, and he's still like testing the ice all the time, which you still do until you break it enough and you go like, okay, all right, I'm gonna go slower here. But playing someone that was that impulsive and sort of emotionally immature, the older you get, it's just hard to fake that energy. And so in the end, they gave him this self-awareness to admit to his faults and his guilt. And I thought that was so beautiful, and also it was such a joy to get to play that, to get to have this character who all these years had been so smart about everyone he was talking to. Every character he's talking to, he's listening to them, he's changing his spiel depending on how they behave or how they react, and yet he can't see his own shortcomings at all. And he makes huge blunders in his own behaviors, huge blunders. And the writers said, well, that's real. I mean, people can be extremely intelligent about other people in their lives, but they can't see their own shortcomings, the ways in which they don't, misbehave, or they don't want to look at it, or they just don't see it. But it was always a struggle to play a guy who was so aware of others, but so not self-aware. And so in the end, he got to own that awareness and use his intellect to talk and think about himself and make choices for himself. And they weren't simply choices out of resentment. So many of his choices were about resentment and frustration. It's just, that's not a good way to go through life, So it was great to see him make that journey in the final episode.
Did you get to have much say in how the character developed?
No,
went along?
I didn't want any. I told you about that first script with Breaking Bad where I was going to note it and change it, and I thought, don't do that. Just do this. Do what they wrote. However hard it is, figure it out. And that was my ethos then for both those shows the rest of the way. Give me whatever you have, and I will. However I have to do it, I'll figure out who he is, and that's acting.